let's talk about where we're at externally, right? So it's not just the Democrats are terrible with domestic policy. Let me show you the story we got right here from Newsweek. Russia, China, Iran warn U.S. must not intervene in Cuba. That's right. Don't you dare, United States, intervene in Cuba because Russia and China and Iran have said so.
Because Russia would never intervene in Cuba.
Oh, for sure.
There's no history of that.
Remember when the U.S. surrendered to Iran? About 2 years ago? Some small ships were forced to surrender to Iranian gunships?
Yeah. I was in the Navy the day that happened. And seeing that image of my fellow sailors in the same uniform that I was in the Pacific when that happened. They were in the Gulf, and we were serving in similar communities, put it that way. So I was like 1 degree moved from some of those guys. And at that time, we were still on edge with North Korea. We're certainly always on edge with China. It would not have taken much to see people I knew or, various missions to, kind of see myself in that position and thinking that, that image, right, of American sailors on their knees with their hands behind their head.
To Iran, of all countries.
To Iran, and to not have a Secretary of State and a president who are immediately getting on television or picking up the phone and saying...
Well, this was Trump.
No, that was Obama. That was Obama.
2019 was when we had the surrender.
Which surrender are you talking about?
I'm pretty sure it was 2 years ago.
I'm talking about the one in 2016.
What happened in that one that you're talking about?
2016, that was the one where they were held for a couple of days in the Gulf. And they actually were on their knees, hands behind their heads.
And is the one where you were in the Mediterranean, Tim?
Oh, no, you were right. You're right, 2016.
Yeah, that was January 16.
You're right. Wow.
What was the story, by the way? Were they sailing too close out of international waters? They went to Iranian waters?
So there is an island called Farsi Island that's essentially in the middle of the Gulf, so the Gulf is split right now, right? So there's international waters, but then when you get into what a country is called in their economic exclusion zone, that would essentially be considered Iranian waters. However, this island, which is in the middle, is an Iranian island. So they have sovereignty over that. So there is an EEZ around that island as well. And their ship, I believe in the official report, it came out they actually ran out of fuel because the junior officer on there didn't actually calculate the fuel that they would need for the journey. They were going from the northern Gulf all the way down to Bahrain. And they didn't compute it correctly, et cetera, right? It's supposed to be the swing, and then you go around the island, run out of fuel, drift into the waters, get picked up. They say, hey, you're invading our waters. And they say, oh, excuse me, this is just, it's a big mistake, it's huge understanding. Nope, this is U.S. invasion. But you look at the response. Now, this is why when you said it was Trump, I said, no. Imagine Trump on Twitter, right? If the IRGC, if the Iranian Revolutionary Guard had picked up some of our sailors and even considered getting close, right? This is Trump, by the way, who actually did just straight up murk an Iranian general, like the leader of their force, the Quds force, which is like it's kind of like their SEAL Team 6 in many ways, but far beyond that because they're terrorists as well. Obama. I mean, it was we're so sorry. We're so sorry.
What do you think the response from this administration has been following these threats from, communists? I mean, Iran, Russia and China, sure. But what did Jen Psaki say? Jen Psaki refuses to admit communism is the reason behind Cuba's freedom protests. And Joe Biden, others in his administration said it was about COVID. They won't actually confront the issue. They won't actually speak to the public honestly about what's going on in Cuba.
So this is actually
they're scared.
This is actually a situation where Biden, who and I'll give him some advice. I don't think he'll take it, but if he wanted to be smart, this is a chance where you could stand up for U.S. leadership for this is Monroe Doctrine. This is the Caribbean, right? This is nowhere near China. This is nowhere near Russia. This is our backyard. You don't tell us what we're going to do here. Right, that's not how this works. Right, you could have that, and that, by the way, that used to be U.S. policy going back. Democrats, Republicans. That was not a partisan issue. That was we are going to pay attention to what's going on in our backyard. because it is in our national strategic interest to do so, right? Because that actually matters. That's why Guantanamo Bay is our oldest overseas institution, our overseas military installation that we have since 1898. Right, I've actually walked those trails where the Rough Riders went in. A lot of that base, you can actually see, kind of walk through the battles that took place during the Spanish-American War. It's kind of amazing just to be able to walk in those footsteps. But for him to not just stand up for being the leader of the United States and act like a great power, right? It really goes to show you that how much that it's almost like Biden's personal decline almost parallels the way that he's putting America on the path to decline.
Here's the analogy I use. It's like the dad who gets bossed around at work and is feeble, so he goes home angry and beats his wife because she can't do anything about it, right? Not strong enough to stand up to those who are actually causing us problems. The Biden administration has a really easy time of condemning its own citizens. The 75 million people voted for Trump. They're the bad guys. But Russia, China, and Iran, better.
Right. Right. If you were walking around the wrong place of the Capitol at the wrong time, and I say this as somebody who was physically there on Constitution Avenue watching as this all took place. Right. I knew, and I said this on air on One American News at the time. I said there are going to be people showing up a quarter of the way back or a third of the way back. They have no idea. They're just going to walk up and see an open door and say, "Oh, I guess this is open. I guess they're," or someone's holding the door open.
Cops are holding it open.
I guess I can just walk in, right? You can be held without charge. You can be and by the way, held for peacefully, and it's essentially trespassing. What it was doing, right? None of the rhetoric actually matches in many cases with the charges that are going on. But you can be held without bail, which is a complete gross violation of the Constitution. You can be fired from work. You can have your personal funds and your banking, you're debanked. All that stuff's going on. Entire family in Texas was just arrested, and I was looking through the charges. There's not even including a minor member of the family was arrested. No violent acts whatsoever. So that's Joe Biden when it comes to his own citizens, right? His own constituents. And so we have a really interesting situation right now where it almost feels like he doesn't treat those people as if they are citizens of the United States and he is their president, right? It's almost like he kind of thinks, well, those guys are Trump supporters, so I can treat them differently than I would treat a regular U.S. citizen who's all of us.
This is what people need to understand in this country. Joe Biden has not been speaking to you this entire time. That's what's really fascinating. You get these conservatives who are like, oh, I can't believe Joe Biden said that. It's crazy. It's like, bro, he's not talking to you.
Not talking to you.
When Joe Biden came out and was like, we might need another lockdown in this country, Texas and Florida had already reopened. He wasn't talking to you, red states. When he comes out and says all of these things, he is not talking to you. He's talking about you. They don't like you. They hate you. And Republicans, conservatives, disaffected liberals, political homeless, IDW, whatever you are, you better recognize that they look at themselves as the correct, the mainstream, the appropriate, and anyone who deviates from that group is an outside other extremist. So you could be, this is really what cults and authoritarianism is made of.
I have a great example of this. And it's not Biden. And this is what makes it so perfect. It was Lina Wen, who is that
Liana Wen.
I was on to Wen Lina. And so she's a CNN. I think she just put her on as a medical analyst, right? She's actually the former president of Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
They never mention that, right?
Yeah.
But she has this comment, and it's so illustrative of this mentality, and it so perfectly defines what you're talking about, because she says, we need to make life harder for the unvaccinated. We need to make there be penalties for them going through this. We need to, and I'm not even talking about necessarily focusing on her vaccine comments, but which of course a lot of people have talked about. They've gone over and again. But when she says we, who is she talking about? When she says we need to do this, I said you're not a member of government. You're not elected to anything. You're a CNN contributor, and yet you're acting as if you have state-like power over. And that is why I use this term that I've started to put it into the colloquial parlance, and I've introduced it. I call it the overstate, right? And it sort of combines this idea of the sovereignty of the U.S. government, right, and state governments, but also the connection with the media, with academia, with social media, et cetera, Silicon Valley, Wall Street, this idea that there is, so when she's saying we, like who's she talking about?
The party.
Right, the party, right, exactly.
Party members.
Anyone that will allow themselves to be brainwashed in the moment.
Right, who's we? Who's we,
the American Shadow Communist Party, we'll call it that.
We is a very powerful word, and that is a cult-building mechanism.
Yeah. And I noticed that nobody is bringing up the fact that she just keeps using it over and over. We need to do this. We need to set these in place. You know, we need to have these.
When
why are you saying we? Right, and it's also otherizing because it's we versus you. Right, it's us versus them. Wow.
When I listened, when I see the things that Joe Biden is posting, let me see if I can pull up something specific. There's a video I tweeted. Here we go. Biden said, actually, I'm going to play it. I'm just going to play the video. Is it not working? We can't. Oh, I muted it. That's the problem. I'm like, why is there no sound coming out? Oh, I turned the sound off.
We do a little technology around here.
Here we go. You ready?
It's no longer just about who gets to vote or making it easier for eligible voters to vote. It's about who gets to count the vote. Who gets to count whether or not your vote counted at all. It's about...
So that's only 16 seconds. I don't know the full context, but assuming that is close enough to the context, you know, he's talking about voting laws in Georgia.
The new laws, right.
The new laws. This country is already in divorce. I mean, seriously. When that woman on CNN says, we need to do X, she's not calling you we. She's not referring to you, the people who are watching the show. She's saying you're outside this. When Joe Biden says it's no longer about who gets to vote, it's about who gets to count the vote or something to that effect. Yeah. He's basically saying it doesn't matter.
What is he talking about? Where's the context of that?
They're claiming Republicans are trying to strip away the right to vote when in actuality it's the Democrats who are doing it.
Oh, okay.
And so he's saying it's not just about, paraphrasing.
Well, I gotta say,
it's who gets to count it, because he's arguing that the Republicans will count it incorrectly.
Can I just say though, I gotta say this, I gotta be clear. We're gonna do a little fact checking around here.
Thank you, Jack.
As I was driving up here, and you know, we're not gonna dox, but we are in a somewhat rural area. I did not see a single FedEx Kinko's on my entire drive here. And Kamala Harris, I gotta say, I think she's right on this one. No Kinko's, even though they went out of business 15 years ago. Not a single Kinko's did I see.
She actually said Kinko's.
She actually said Kinko's.
Out of business for 15 years.
Yeah, well, they were, it's FedEx.
Oh, FedEx.
Yeah, so FedEx bought them out. But even still, like she said Kinko's. That's like, that's Kitty City.
We've had a lot of people talk about peaceful divorce in this country. And I'm not a fan because I don't want to see China take over. Like, we need American unity, American culture. We need to have a strong comeback. But a lot of people have said, peaceful divorce.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
How many presidents do we have right now?
How many
presidents of the United States do we have right now?
I don't know what you mean by that. Like, obviously, we have one. We have Joe Biden.
Right, we have Joe Biden. But do you think that there are people who, at this point, just see him so illegitimate that they just don't view him as the president, and they would view someone else?
This is not Biden or Trump. This is 2016 when people said Trump is not my president.
Right.
That's exactly where it started. Schism where there were and Russia. Tens of millions.
And you can go, by the way, Joe Biden, you have the clip he said there, but there was another clip where he said, you know, that's not how we do things in America. You win, you lose, and then you go on. You don't keep whining about it. And then I'm like, Joe, I'd take 2 seconds and run a Twitter search on his own account. And he says, the 2016 election was interfered with by Russia. They've undermined our democracy.
Yep.
Right.
Pelosi said it.
Right. But it's right in your own words. In your own words, you said essentially that Donald Trump didn't win because of Russia. So you were saying he was an illegitimate president just months ago.
When Joe Biden, Democrat pundits, CNN, begin referring to themselves as we, which excludes you, you need to recognize what that means is happening in this country. Already it is very obvious that there are two clearly distinct groups. One currently has the power of federal law enforcement, and they are using it to crush dissidents. Like little old ladies. There's that video where the cop opens the door for the little old lady, arrested, charged. Some of these people in solitary. Antifa, free to go. It's very obvious where we're at right now. When Joe Biden comes out and he says, like, they're basically saying repeatedly, we, not us. And the we is a reference to Democrats and the party members and not anybody who opposes them or any Americans. He is not a president for this country. He is a president for a faction.
You can use the word we for everybody. Like, I think we need decentralized free software social media, and I'm not talking about a group of us. I mean, all humans.
Of course. But when she said we need to make life hard for the people who aren't vaccinated,
it's abusive.
In her context, she's referring to we as a select group of people, how they are going to control and punish. She specifically is talking about punitive measures for, and not even to get into that issue, but punitive measures for people who have decided not to opt into your preferred preference. We are going to take
it's not even that. It's that people
against them.
There are people who are pro-vaccine who have danced and sang at the advent of mRNA vaccines, who are told by their doctors for pregnancy reasons, for allergy reasons, you are not recommended to get this. And they're saying make their lives harder.
Or as we're now hearing, autoimmune disease, that apparently some people have this FDA announcement.
That's right. That's why I'm so offended by like door-to-door vaccination, because you go to a doctor, they give you a list, you check off. Do you have all? They give you a huge list of ailments, and they're like, check off what you have. Because the doctor looks at it and goes, oh man, we can't prescribe you this antibiotic because you have X syndrome. But a guy going to your doorstep, they're not going through at 7-Eleven, at bars. I don't want to get into that whole debate. The point is, they're not talking about, when she said we, she was referring to a group of people who are ex-governmental or extra-governmental, who somehow have the ability to implement policies and enforcement over everybody else. Who is she or the people on CNN to assert that they have the ability to even enforce non-laws over people who are not part of that group?
Here's the essential truth. They do have that power.
Right.
They do.
They know it.
They do, and when she says that and doesn't get any pushback from any of the, and you can see there's 3 people on at that point, no pushback whatsoever, because they all have that power, because they know they're in the driver's seat, and they know that they are part of, and there isn't a name for it, and that's why I'm coming up with it. I'm giving this title the overstate, because they know that they are a part of that influence network, right, of those competing interests of these, in many cases, CNN's owned by a multinational company, right? So we know that they are part of that group that is in power, and they know that they can wield that power over others. And in this moment, there's no check. There's no check on that power.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.